Say what? Whatever his name is, he fucked that beat up. That beat is everything. He DJ'd down there. You know you can screen record it. Not get you. Well, if you send it to me, I can make it an audio. I hate when motherfuckers is late for their own show. Like, you got me at your home and I'm here before you. The fuck? Yes. I'm just waiting for Jake to fucking get on so we can start this show. Like, I'm ready to get it done over with. Alright, powerhouse. So, if we have a power hours, then I'm gonna have to cancel my radio show. 6:30.
I don't know. Sometimes it goes out, sometimes it don't.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, or just stuff for tomorrow, get your shit together for work, because if it's a power, I'm just gonna have panic. Now I try to close the damn thing again.
Alright.
My screen keeps opening up, and I'm trying to keep it closed, but it's not. I move. I tell you that I'm not moving these chairs. They sitting way back. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere.
How are you late? How are you late for your own show, bro? Like, what the fuck?
Huh?
This is why I need shit to start on time because people had other shows after this. Like, what the fuck?
You got two chicken legs, two chicken thighs, right?
Okay.
I mean, there, once you got one, I got two in there too. I'm going to put that on my next week. Yeah, you wanna go over and take it? Gianni Sheets confetti for her birthday.
Okay.
But then we gotta pick up Cameron at 6 o'clock for basketball there, so maybe we can play today how to get to basketball. Is it in the mall?
What?
Basketball.
What, Bosco?
Bosco.
Yeah, it's inside. It's inside.
Oh, it is? I thought it was outside the mall.
I think you could go in from the outside too.
You get up at 6. I want Gianni already here, so we can pick her up and see who's gonna go.
I heard they want the news. Well, we got it just for you. What's your team? Who your player? Who your crew? I heard they want the news. The spotlight is on you, and if you in the hot seat, it's times 2. I heard they want the news. Come tune in to the crew, but we got the hook up just like black and blue. I heard they want the news. Spotlight Sports, what it do? Hit subscribe and that like button too. I heard they want the news.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
Can't hear you, Jake. Hold on. Let me see if I can unmute you real quick. I can't hear you at all, brother. I don't know if it's me or what, but can you hear me? I can't hear you, brother. I cannot hear you. I don't know what it is, but I can't hear you for some reason. We have some technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just stand by. We have some technical difficulties on Jake's side. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. All right, we having some technical difficulties. I don't know if it's on my end. But can y'all hear Jake? Let y'all see. Let me try to hear it on YouTube. Let me try to hear it on YouTube. I think for some reason my microphone is kind of off too. It sounds weird. Let me just double check mine. Mic check, mic check. Okay, yeah, mine. I had to fix mine real quick. We're having technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what's going on with Jake's microphone. Jake, can you hear yourself? Yeah. All right. So it says that you're muted here. Let's see. All right. So you muted yourself. Okay. I can't unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Awesome. There we go.
I don't know why that these technical difficulties have been happening, but other than that, we are live. We are definitely live, and now that we have everything up and running,
I know, right?
boy, what a magnificent Monday it is today! As we're live on iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and of course Instagram, where you can like, follow, and subscribe to the Snake Sports Talk Show and also the Spotlight Sports Network to keeping you up to date on future and past shows. So, boy, what a weekend we've had. NASCAR was up in town, and I have to tell you, all the performers that were out here. We had Buck Cherry, we had every single rock and country superstar that were here in the annual Penzel 400, and it was a lot of fun. I wasn't there, but a lot of just, what I've seen so far, it's been popping here in Vegas. And not to mention the UFC fights. Colby Covington just coming up victorious.
I wasn't even able to watch it this weekend, man.
But I will say though, I mean, shout out to Mark Smith, the referee who was in charge during the Bryce Mitchell fight. I thought that was a great one. The Kevin Holland one. I was a little bit like he's taunting the fighter several times, but I thought that was exciting to see. But in the end, lots and lots of really good fights throughout that whole entire fight card. Other than that, we got a lot to talk about because moves are being made within the NFL, and we still don't really know when baseball is officially going to start. So,
baseball, get a grip on it. Just let it happen. Come on.
Seriously. Well, with all things happening throughout it, there was a lot of sweet moments throughout the past weekend and the past weekend, and I want to start off with one. I like finales. I really do. And every time it's not always about how you start a career or a show or whatever the case may be. It's always about how you end up finishing.
Right.
So, of course, the result itself did not go exactly as many of us would have hoped, but that never mattered. And what I'm talking about was Coach Mike Krzyzewski's last official home game with Duke.
Yeah.
If there's anybody in college basketball who I would say probably one of the greatest I've ever watched in my lifetime, because the second that's closest to it, Roy Williams at North Carolina, and several down the board. But Mike Krzyzewski, what's so special about his time in Duke was he was the kind that you meet him walking down the halls at Duke. And I mean, Duke University, everybody knows, big basketball program. Not big in all the other sports itself, but the program does provide for itself. But anytime you were walking down the halls, he loved watching futures that would one day shape our world. And Coach K was always the prime example of what it meant to not just coach players, but coaching gentlemen to basically think more than I would say usually build to be much better in themselves, not just as players, but as gentlemen. And he
Yeah.
did that. He had X amount of players: Kyrie Irving, Zion Williamson, JJ Redick. I mean, even Shane Battier.
Marvin
And-
Bagley.
Yep, Marvin Bagley, and even
Christian
Christian
Laettner.
Laettner.
Yeah.
One of the greatest college prospects.
Grant Hill.
Grant Hill. All of these Duke University guys.
Yeah,
I mean, you could say what you want to about the other big-time programs like Kentucky or North Carolina. I mean,
right.
any of them that have come from North Carolina, I can name off the top: Michael Jordan and even Tyler Hansborough, several of them that have come from North Carolina University.
I don't know if you saw, Jake, but did you see they went viral where Coach K sent a letter to
Yes.
Jordan, let them know whatever decision you make, he's going to be great and stuff like that. So Coach K almost had Michael Jordan at Duke. Just imagine if Jordan went to Duke University instead of UNC. I don't know how legendary that Coach K would be, man.
Duke
that's
would
insane.
have been the prime destination. If any of them were looking for basketball scholarships, that would have been the prime destination. We wouldn't even talk about Kentucky. We wouldn't even talk about North Carolina, let alone even talk about some of the
Kansas
other programs.
or Arizona
Kansas,
or Villanova, any of them schools.
Yeah, any of the schools. But this is the prime example of why Coach K was so great at what he does. And it wasn't mostly coaching men's basketball. It was more of coaching these potential players into young, hardworking gentlemen. And that was what he was mostly known for. And if you had seen at the end of it and how it really looked in the atmosphere of Duke, they didn't care about the win or loss. They cared knowing it's Coach K's finale.
Right.
They know that after this time, that's it. And all of us, we wouldn't care whether or not of certain materialistic stuff. The matter at hand is that he put in the time and he won so many different championships. He has been to the March Madness tournament all through. His record has been great during the tournament. And has won several titles and has also been a guy that has shaped a lot of big time prospects. I mean, Zion went on as one of the number one best overall picks, and it's still to say if he really does produce well in the NBA. But even Kyrie Irving, number one overall pick in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And lots of these players that have
a lot
come
of Hall of
from
Famers is in the Hall of Fame because of Coach K too.
Exactly. And that's where, in the end, regardless of and there was no other opponent. Let's just say this. There was no other opponent who could have beaten them than North Carolina. I tell you, that was one.
I think that was the true curtain call there.
It seriously was. I think that was more of it was bridging respect, because the fact of, even if North Carolina came away with the game, they still bridged the respect for Coach K.
Right.
Because, I mean, you think about it. The time when Roy Williams retired in North Carolina, we knew where everyone was. I knew where I was. I was like, he's by far shaped this program, coached so many different superstars in his career, and is wildly respected in the world of college basketball. And the same with Coach K. And I think in the end, they built that bridge. And in the end, this was the way that it was meant to basically finish up. Regardless of the win or loss, everyone at Duke, as you knew, all paid their respects. They all shared their time that they had. Whether you were walking the halls of the university, whether you were stepping on the floor at practice, or in an exhibition game, or even in a tournament, everywhere you were, Coach K was willing to make the time and to build the time to coaching young boys. As you and I have known, we play basketball in elementary school, and the second they become grown men, this was what he was shaping them. Shaping them to understand what real life was about. And for that, we thank Coach K for all the memories. We'll miss him for sure. And again, I don't even know how college basketball is literally going to be like without
I
Roy
was thinking the
Williams and
same
Coach
thing.
K.
I
mean,
was thinking the same thing because I see this in my thoughts about Coach K. He was one of those college basketball players. I mean, not even players, but a coach himself that never left those kids to go to the NBA.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
one thing I can say about Coach K. He really invested in those kids, even though all the rumors of him over the years of him coming to the NBA. Yeah, we understand that he coached USA basketball and he coached those professional players, but he never took that step because he wanted to get that young talent to be prepared for the NBA because he knew what type of players he make sure he got the best out of you at Duke. He makes sure he prepared you in the classroom. Even if you go back after being drafted, he still makes sure that you go back and get your degree and you have a successful career in the NBA. That's one thing I loved about Coach K. He never left college to go to the NBA.
Yeah, never did. And he knew exactly what he was investing for. This was more than just a bigger paycheck. It was more of making sure these kids were successful in the classroom. They were successful even just in sports, but they were prepared for the successes after. And that's what I think was what was so I think it's what's so genuine about him. And something that I think a lot of people will never forget in their hearts and never forget the times that they were in a generation where you look at a lot of these kids nowadays. I mean, we're getting future techs, we're getting future workers that are just going to be shifting with the status quo and innovating the way the world should be. And we need more genuine people like that, willing to take in the time. And that's what he was about. So, still sticking in basketball, but we're shifting up into the NBA, but one that's kind of not feeling so great. But ultimately, we all knew where we were when the contract was up and there was time to picking destinations. And as everyone knows, where you land in a job or even in sports, it matters. You could be in one place that, regardless of loyalty and what you build to a lot of organizations and even a lot of companies, you know what my girlfriend had told me, which is very true. People don't leave the company because the company themselves have all the benefits. They have everything that you're needing to building your future. They would much rather leave the management because if the management's not right and things are not clicking, then the only thing I can say is it may be time to look for a fresh new place, fresh new start. And I say this because I think it's kind of coming true and clear with Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets. We knew where we were at the time when Kevin Durant spent his years, originally Seattle's big pick before moving to Oklahoma City, and spent great years. One of the best that I think we've ever seen.
Some of the best teams that we saw in Oklahoma City in those years with the James Harden and the Russell Westbrooks, the Serge Ibakas of the world. I think Steven Adams was over there as well. So, yeah, they had a team.
They had a team. And in the end, everybody was rooting for Kevin Durant. He left a mark in Oklahoma City, which a lot of people, you live in Oklahoma, you're either diehard Sooner or you're just basically living life, whatever it may be.
Diehard Sooner or you're a Texas Longhorn is one or the other.
One or the other. And regardless of it, we knew where we were the time he left Oklahoma City to joining Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. We all bashed him. We thought if you couldn't beat them, which I do believe they could have, you join them. And that's specifically what Kevin Durant did. But in the end,
think he joined them a bit too early? You think he didn't want to take you think he did it early? He did it at the right time? Or do you think that he should have waited another year, then do that?
I think personally, he may have done it at the right time itself. And I think it's probably because, and I knew what was going through Kevin Durant's mind, because you make it into the finals, you want to win the finals. When they were in against the Miami Heat, there was no stopping LeBron James. We all knew this. Between him, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Shane Battier, all of these impactful players, there was no stopping Miami.
Right.
But Oklahoma City they were very impactful themselves in the West. And the fact that you had Derek Fisher, one of the most clutch three-point
I
shooters.
forgot they had Derek Fisher. My God.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
And that was at the tail end of his career. So you
Right.
have a veteran. And I can honestly say, between him and JJ Redick, I'm looking at the same guy. Because JJ Redick, you would see in a playoff team, he's very impactful in those ways. And knows
the only difference between Derek Fisher and JJ Redick, that JJ Redick was more of a liability on defense than Derek Fisher was. Derek Fisher was known for his clutch threes and was known just for being defensive. Now, when it comes to clutch 3-point shots, you could put them two in the same sentence, but defensively, you'll have to be like, okay, JJ Redick was more of a liability than Derek Fisher was. So I get the comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the end, the second the Thunder ended up losing the finals, I mean, they wanted to be back into it. And if you looked at how the West shaped up, it was not even close, to a point of the only teams you would have had to go through was the San Antonio Spurs with Kawhi Leonard at the time.
Yeah.
The Lakers were kind of on their downward trend, still had the late Kobe. And then there was Houston at the end, where they get James Harden. So Houston now had to end up starting
all over.
Yes. And so Kevin Durant, in the end, in the playoffs, remember how everyone knew that they were leading 3-1 in that series against Golden State.
Yeah.
And the fact that you could say what you want to, put the liability on Russell Westbrook, put the liability on a couple of other players that knew that they should have been impactful in those areas. But in the end, Oklahoma City knew this was not going to end well. So the second Kevin Durant took the Golden State job, I mean, ultimately, Golden State, whether you like it or not, they could have used Kevin Durant.
Yeah. Facts.
And you've seen it. And in the end, whether it's a super team, and remember, super teams never last long. Too big of contracts, too much of liabilities, and one's going to want a bigger payday than the other. What's so genuine about Golden State is Steph Curry is willing to do it just because he knows titles are where it's at. He could care less what the money pays out. That's why him and Klay Thompson have had such a close relationship. And same with Draymond. But then the second that Kevin Durant, and how everybody put the spotlight, Steph didn't care about it.
He sure didn't.
You could put the spotlight on Kevin Durant, and that's fine. I mean, he's an impact. I mean, he's one of the best players currently in this league. I mean, with the best jump shot and the one guy, you needed a bucket and you needed a clutch play. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And so Golden State winning those two titles itself was perfect. And
we will talk about
we'll
this
definitely talk about Calvin Ridley.
Get into this Blue City Empire Sports, because
that's
one of the newest topics we had to put on here because of that. Yeah, I cannot wait to get to this segment because I got some things to say to the NFL about this.
Yeah, and I'll definitely get to Jamar Nash's pick as well for the draft, because I know it's definitely talking Chargers for sure. But in the end, Kevin Durant ended up backing out of Golden State, Silicon Valley, for Brooklyn and Kyrie Irving. In the end,
and James Harden at the time.
But in the end, you never saw either of these three play on the same court together. So it tells you a lot. This was not ideally the destination. If I was Kevin Durant, I would have chose. Too much inconsistencies. The other part is they don't have completely a strong enough bench. I liked it when they had Karis LeVert. I like it when they have Spencer Dinwiddie. Yeah. And in the end, doesn't pan out well. James Harden's in Philly, and he's happy. He's thriving. Kyrie Irving can't even play in home games. And now
that might change real soon in New York. That might change.
Yeah. So in the end, you're Kevin Durant. You're basically Tom Hanks in Castaways. You're alone on an island.
Yep.
And this is the part.
Because now you got a Ben Simmons where you don't even know when he's going to play. Probably don't play this year at all, knowing him.
And I have to tell you, that is a lot for head coach Steve Nash, of all people, who you knew when he was playing in his playing days in Phoenix and in a lot of places, of all people. That's a lot to take on. That's a lot of different egos and emotions you take on, and it's not consistent. And this is why, for Kevin Durant, I'll be honest, if I'm in his shoes, I would not sign a contract extension. I would not. I would test the market, because honestly, look at all the teams before Brooklyn. If you look back at all the teams before Brooklyn, could you imagine Kevin Durant in Dallas with Luka Doncic? Could you imagine how impactful that team would be? And Luka would be happy, because both of them, I truly think, are leaders in their own way. And Luka would finally have an impactful star that can help him.
Now, I can respond to this because, mind you, I don't know, a lot of people don't know, but Max, you knew I was just recently in New York for my birthday last week. Now, they are changing the mandates, because I was a prime example of the mandates where certain places you don't have to wear a mask, or you just have to be fully vaccinated or not show your vaccination. So they are changing the mandates in New York. It's not even about the private sector laws. They are changing the mandates. Like when I first got into a restaurant in New York, I didn't even have to show my vaccination card no more. That was mandatory in New York for many months. So that's why Kyrie Irving came out and said earlier in an article that I saw on ESPN that, you know, they are coming, that New York is coming to their senses now. So the state of New York in itself, I'm telling you, Kyrie Irving will be able to play in home games very soon. They just waiting for the mayor to say it. And once that mayor say it, that mandate for unvaccinated or vaccinated players to play in home games and stuff like that is really up to the NBA is up to the NBA and the state of New York to have that mandate change. But it's changing by the day, because I didn't have to wear a mask at all out there in New York. At all. So I mean, it's slowly, but it's coming. It's not is Kyrie Irving's going to play in home games before the regular season is over. That's all I'm gonna really say about it. I just wanted to respond to that. Shout out to Max Covers TV though.
Absolutely, yeah. We love watching his content. He's got great stuff. Anybody that looks up for Houston Rockets, Green Bay Packers, definitely look up Max Coverage.
And Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh man.
You know, his other host is a Jacksonville Jaguars fan.
That's true. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, and in the end, like, this is my thing. Could you have imagined Kevin Durant in Dallas? I mean, with Luka Doncic, that would have been the most impactful team itself. Mark Cuban would literally look like a genius. In the end, Luka, a player overseas, comes in and plays with Kevin Durant. You have two of arguably the best. And I think that would have already pushed for title, because I like Tim Hardaway Jr., but he's not somebody that I can honestly say as a prime impactful player on the starting roster. But he's somebody that gives me points, gives me minutes, gives me something. And I know he's an impactful player. So in the end, Dallas would have had several times. Could you imagine Kevin Durant in Utah with Donovan Mitchell and even with Mike Conley? Utah would finally break away that curse, and you would have somebody who can defend the wing well,
right, and
give you those shots, which is what Donovan Mitchell wants.
Or if you just would have had Durant just go to Washington with that young squad with Kyle Kuzma, Dinwiddie, and a few of those young cats over there. I mean, he has to me, and he has more caliber players. Okay, let me put it like this: outside of Kyrie Irving, the Washington Wizards have more caliber players than what Brooklyn has outside of Kyrie Irving.
I agree.
That's just my opinion.
I agree. And I do think that because how Brooklyn really went about before all of this happened, when Kyrie Irving was moving from Boston to Brooklyn and Kevin Durant was moving there, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and even at times you had a young D'Angelo Russell who was
Yes.
playing his tail off. And I thought for sure Brooklyn would have worked this thing. You didn't want to have Kyrie Irving in the middle of the building because that would have shifted a lot of egos.
I
And
agree.
then Kevin Durant with the burner accounts, all this stuff, it's out of control. And so this is why nobody's here to basically brag on Kevin Durant. But when that happened, I knew what he was thinking. He wanted a championship one way or another. But in the end, I wouldn't have fed into mainstream media. You could say what you want to. But in the end, my thought was if you went and won a championship and you went back to Oklahoma City and you would have built some, even at a time when Chris Paul was there,
Right.
could you imagine the championship? They would have had their first one there. And I think that would have solved everything. People, instead of hating Kevin Durant, they would have loved him again. And that's where we would have been at this point.
Absolutely.
But I truly think with the way things are shifting, because Brooklyn's feeling the blues, and so is Kevin Durant. And if I'm KD, I would not waste my time in Brooklyn. I would seriously consider testing the market because with everything happening in the Lakers, Kevin Durant to the Lakers, I mean, they're wanting something new.
I definitely do not want that to happen.
Neither would I, because look,
I
it would feel a lot.
And people think that people would think that Kevin Durant would be the savior for the Lakers. I still think it wouldn't be the savior. It's too many people that want the basketball over there with the Lakers. You put LeBron there with a Carmelo Anthony and a Kevin Durant, and you have the young guys like Malik Monk that like to score too.
Right.
It just doesn't work. And then you have a Westbrook that has been playing one of his worst career years in basketball, and you want to put him over there? No.
Right.
Do not go to the Lakers. Do not bandwagon like all these guys did. They went to the Lakers, and now they're shitting the bed. Excuse my language, but hey, it is what it is.
And
the Lakers is just shitting the bed.
And that's why I've said it before. I mean, they reminded me so much of the 2008 New York Yankees because they did the same similar thing where you had all these talented players who are already pretty much past their prime. And then by the next year in 2009, they win a World Series because they went and finally figured it out. We can't have these old guys. They're past their primes. We might as well save up what we have with the amount of money they make each year and then go and start younger. And sure enough, it worked out perfectly. And you had the right people. You had Derek Jeter, you had A-Rod, you had Robinson Cano, you had Melky Cabrera, and in the end, you add in AJ Burnett, CC Sabathia, you have David Robertson, you have Jabba Chamberlain, all these guys, and they won the World Series. That's all I would say. That's all I would say. But we all remembered how 2008 literally was. But because again, they were 89 and 73, and they were third in the AL East, and then next year they won 103 and 59.
Right.
Like I'm telling you, it's possible. And if the Lakers kind of see something like that, it would be easier. But I just seriously think, Kevin, I would just literally explore my options. I wouldn't waste my time in Brooklyn. I feel bad for Steve Nash right now, but I would not be wasting my time knowing everything that was promised and everything that was built all got torn down. Not even 5 years into this thing. This was early. So coming up next. So of course we all are very curious about when and what time baseball will start, but only one specific player, one player who speaks his mind. We can't ignore it. And he's the reason why everybody starts talking about who the faces of baseball is. But you will all know exactly who that is. I'll explain who and what this means. All coming up next. And we'll talk at least a little bit more on NFLs because we got the drafts coming up. We know we have our big show path to the draft, which we love Dante and Eric who run the show. And they've been really hyping me up with the draft coming up.
Oh yeah, they definitely been hyping me up. I can't wait to to talk about it on Spotlight Raiders Talk right after this. So it's gonna be fun, and it's good to be back on Spotlight Raiders Talk. So it's gonna be fun to try to get those charges again, you know?
Oh my gosh. Save it for the next season, man. We're only just focusing on what we got to upgrade first.
Facts. True.
So of course, as you mentioned before, guys, I've been speaking about this for a long time, and I will tell you, it's just getting better and better. And the One Sports app, as I told you, not only just your daily fantasy pick'ems each day of each week. Now you have a sports book that's involved, and it is open, it is live, and it is all brand new, available at the App Store and Google Play. Super Draft Pro. As you know, I'm big on Super Draft Pro's DFS, but now Sportsbook has officially arrived. You can start betting on all of the games from all the different bet lines offered and available. Also, player prop bets for over under of certain players that you like and what the performance may be. There's also now casino games that you can officially play for all of our diehard gamblers out there. And of course, remember, always seek out, if in case gambling problems, definitely seek help. But it's brand new. It's awesome. I love it. And I was betting a couple of times with, the UFC fights, looking throughout all the cards. I went 3-2, but in the end, it's so much fun. And best of all, you now have super coins, which you can convert and could win you thousands of different prizes. When the more and more you spend up on it and build up, you can be winning different cash prizes. You can be winning like a PlayStation 5, all sorts of different prizes all around at the one app that's got you all the best in sports and that unifies all of us together to enjoy sports again. So download, play like a pro, sign up like a pro, share like a pro, all in one with Super Draft Pro.
And just to let everybody know, we do have 15% off on all merchandise right here on the Spotlight Sports Network, which is spotlightsportsgear.com. Make sure you go get your hoodies, your mugs, especially it's going to be warming up. So now we might throw the tank tops on there, throw some t-shirts on there. And we got some other brand new accessories over there on spotlightsportsgear.com. 15% off only on spotlightsportsgear.com.
All right, good to have you guys all back here. Snake Sports Talk Show.
Yeah, let's get it.
Oh yeah. You know, I was really thinking about this, Darion, like just before we ended up going up on break, but it's just so fascinating now that we have. You remember the time when we were up on the shutdown and we were literally covering a lot of all the big time sports. And
Yeah.
we've seen sports that have thrived and we've seen sports that have basically had their downfall. And right now, because I saw this the other day, and after everything that's happening in Major League Baseball and more rule changes, more of all this and that, and we still cannot come to an agreement.
Right.
But so you all know who the face of baseball is in this era now. It's not Shohei Ohtani. It's not Fernando Tatis Jr. It is Mike Trout. He came out and said, and people that know when Mike Trout speaks, everyone is going to listen. This is not something that people would automatically ignore. But it basically had said in his post, as I bring it up, but I thought this was very impactful because in the end, how much longer are you going to continuously wait? How much longer are you going to play with this game?
Right.
And it was basically said very simple. I want to play. I love our game, but I know we need to get the CBA right. Instead of bargaining in good faith, MLB locked us out. Instead of negotiating a fair deal, Rob canceled games. Players stand together for our game, for our fans, and for every player who comes after us. We owe it to the next generation. What does that tell you? That basically says no more screwing around.
Right.
Because in the end, it's always this time of year. I get excited for when we have March Madness, yes, because it's both our birthday months. And that's where we know a lot of things come to a close. But in the end, it starts up a new season. And that's where baseball always comes in. So earlier, Major League Baseball put in and said that the MLB and the PA agreed to terms to banning shifts, implement a pitch clock, and make bases larger in 2023. Okay.
Yeah, I seen that over the weekend that they announced that.
Yeah, first and foremost, like I'm done with the goofing off. Because in the end, we owe it to the fans. We owe it to the workers. From what I was told, and I thought this was great. This was a great grand gesture by all of the major league players. But the players associated all together, and they combined and they ended up making $1 million relief fund for workers during the shutdown time, which
Facts.
I am glad for because it reminds you what is truly important. When the shutdown happened and all you could think about were all of the people who were working tirelessly. I mean, we watched the bubble. There were people that couldn't leave their sites. There were people who could not go days without certain rations and a lot of like a lot of things that they needed to keep inventories on. They couldn't go without. So they had to stay in remote areas for the sake of their families, for the sake of people, and for the sake of their own healths. And what happened then? It thrived in the NHL.
Right.
They ended up utilizing Edmonton and Toronto as their only two remote spots. And it worked out perfectly because, good God, any time of the season, there's always snow in Canada. It was easy. The NBA had a remote spot. And for the West and the East, and in the end, we had a finals. And it worked out perfectly in the end. And by the way, these were on tail ends of the season. So it wasn't like they were missing a whole lot of games. They just needed to figure out whether we're going to have playoffs or not. And it worked out just fine. The NFL, before the season even started, say what you want to about Roger Goodell, but they were figuring this thing out as much as they possibly could to have a season. And it was not easy.
Even if it wasn't no fans involved.
Exactly. And all you're caring about was making sure the players were good. That was
Right.
it. So I truly think Major League Baseball, in the end of this, you had months and months to discuss this, to having a plan. I'll be honest. When the shutdown was all going around, the one sport that I kept myself entertained was literally Premier Lacrosse League. Nobody would have ever thought lacrosse was really going to be the one that thrived during the shutdown. They were in an open spot like the NFL, no fans, but it didn't matter. It was like we're playing pickup games, and they were not as shook about the whole thing. And they played it right. They played a lot of protocols. They made sure that all the players, and they're not really like close to each other. Everybody's spread out. They're all on a field. They play it just like NHL, basketball, and football all together. So it wasn't like they could not perform this well. And they were the talk of it. So baseball had time. You had months and months to get a season going. I still said they could have got 100 games through, take out the 62 that was there. You could have had 100 games in the season, when instead you had to go 60. Why? You could have figured out exactly all the protocols. If you were paying attention to NBA and Adam Silver, Roger Goodell in the NFL, or even Gary Bettman in NHL, the hopes was you would have understood. But now you're in this big abysmal position, and you can't even get a deal done. I think it's ridiculous. Why do we need to increase the sizes of the bases? Why? There's no point.
They already wide enough. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, makes no sense. I understand the pitch clock portion because they want to speed the game. But the other part, why do we need to worry about banning shifts? It doesn't make any sense. All I put is that the people that should be responsible are these hitting coaches. You got to teach these guys to literally hit away from the shift, not towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part where I'm like, baseball has completely been so asinine in these last few months, and it's become ridiculous. Games are getting canceled, and by the way, Big League Weekend that was supposed to come up out here in Vegas, we're not having that. So the Guardians and the A's are not even going to be here. Not even the Cubs or the Diamondbacks or even any other baseball team. And the A's, of all teams that are in discussions about where their next area is going to be, whether it still is in Oakland, or maybe it's in Vegas, or maybe it's somewhere. But they got to have all the money's worth. But to me, I thought it was a great grand gesture that the players paid attention. But everybody in the PA and even the commissioner, Rob Manfred, this is ridiculous. If you didn't see my past episode where I completely ranted and I put in my candidacy for MLB commissioner because of somebody who pays attention to all of the major sports, but plus also understands the history behind the sport itself. None of these owners, I mean, you saw Derek Jeter literally step down from Miami.
Yes, I was surprised about that, but hey.
I was like, it's a lot.
With MLB.
Yeah, because they don't want to deal with this type of asinine thing. And I think this is exactly what we're witnessing. But I hope they strike this deal, because this is now not just toying the fans. It's toying a lot of the players that want to play. I have a really good friend of mine that I'd love to bring on the show who's in minor leagues in Pittsburgh, and I cannot wait to see him play in the big leagues. But now it's kind of fooling around with his chances. And he's worked hard. He's worked tirelessly, and he deserves a chance. The other part is you have all of the tireless workers who made sure that the field itself is clean. I mean, Yankee Stadium, Fenway, Wrigley, all these other ballparks, you don't see a single mess by the time the game itself starts. And it's beautiful. I hear all the time when people end up taking trips to San Diego and go to Petco Park, and they go to a lot of these places inside the ballpark, and they say it's phenomenal. It's fascinating. I don't understand this. And I am right now at the fences where if you got to let this thing blow up, and I've said it before, there is no better comparison as far as negotiating a deal. You look at baseball, you're automatically looking at our administration in our country. There's nobody that I would compare to better. Because this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And it's just sad that, even though I'm not really big on baseball, but you have those baseball fans that's willing to pay their bottom dollar just to come to these games. And this is all about, for it's all about money at the end of the day. And it sucks, even though that we say that, MLB is the highest paid sport in the league. Yes, it is. But this is why MLB needs a salary cap, because of stuff like this. Because it's all about money. Even though they probably won't put a salary cap on it, I don't know. I don't know the sources when it comes to that. But it's some things. It's really tedious of stuff. On the reason why the season might not start on time. It's very tedious. It's very small, and people are just using their power to not have this season go on, and it sucks.
Yeah, and it just completely just takes their mental focus away from the actual task itself at hand. I mean,
right.
Here's the thing. I've seen a lot of these responses. I mean, good God, Colin Cowherd came out and said, like, people are like, I won't watch or go to a baseball game ever again. And it's like, and he's like, grow up. Like, but here's the thing. This is not about how the fans are feeling. This is about the fact that the NFL and Roger Goodell, say what you want to, but was successful in the end because the CBA grew every year. Every year it's a new $10 million increase. And in the end, you're not hearing backlashes of not getting paid. That's mostly in organization. That's not in league purposes.
Yeah, it's not in league organization. That's more like the team organization is not paying, basically.
Or good God, the NBA dealt with this. The NBA dealt with this until finally they came to an agreement. And that was that is exactly what this entailed. Yep. So, and then you have the NHL who are in remote air. Could you imagine NHL having the most money, honestly, in that league? And they don't even make that much.
And their highest, which I'm surprised about.
Yeah, and their highest paid players, Carey Price was making $10 million a year. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves were just about $8.5–9 million. And then there's Alex Ovechkin making $8 a year. So
is that guaranteed?
That is guaranteed.
That
and increases
that
because of
for NHL. That has to change.
But this is where you literally look at baseball, and baseball's so spoiled in themselves.
Yes,
this is why the salary cap has to happen. I know a lot of players don't want to hear it and they want to have the most paid guaranteed, but it's not going to work when you have to bring a financial mediator into the middle of the meeting and all the rest of this stuff. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I'm pretty much at the point I'm tired of all of this funny business. It's time to seriously get things rolling, because in the end, you're not going to overlap the NFL, the NBA, and not even the NHL when it comes to television marketing. The only thing I can say is that NHL needs to get better play-by-play commentators. I can't begin to tell you how many times I have tuned into ESPN's showcasing of NHL games, and I'm so disappointed. Like, I'll just sign myself up tomorrow, and I'll just send my resume and just
we
be
endorsing
like,
it. We endorsing it. Jake the Snake Silva needs to be on ESPN NHL Showcase as a commentator. Let's go.
Because you got to go with the flow of the game. But in the end, like, baseball's not going to have the same ratings. The NFL is too good for it because, again, you see how this whole thing works. Friday night lights on Friday, college football on a Saturday, and then the NFL on a Sunday. Nobody can beat that. Everybody loves weekends. That's what it is. Nobody's going to go out of their way during the week unless if you're the NBA and you've got promotions or whatnot. You see promotional tickets all the time. I mean, who's not going to end up going to a $1 beer night game? I mean, come on. I miss those. Now the beers here are $2. They're $2. I'm like,
give me a $2 beer any day. I take that.
Oh my gosh. It's so crazy. Time now for Darion with the news.
And we have the hot press, ladies and gentlemen.
This is the hot press.
So with the hot press here, we have a lot of news coming in. Ben Simmons, number one, won't play for won't play against the Philadelphia 76ers on Thursday night. Jake, what is your thoughts on that?
You know what? I mean, honestly, this is not kind of new for Ben Simmons, honestly. I mean, Ben is just kind of in his own world. But I understand all of this because, first of all, it doesn't seem like he wants to even step foot in an arena. We're just going to absolutely destroy him. I mean, but you take it like a man. Everybody was like, they weren't. Anytime when you watched Reggie Miller, it didn't matter exactly how his performance was going to be. People are going to say whatever that they want to, and I know how Philly fans feel. And Philly is a hard town.
Yes,
They're
it is.
die hard in their sport. This is why, like, James Harden's thriving, and I said this before in my latest episode because three things were going to happen. James Harden was going to thrive. Ben Simmons was not going to. And you already know how Brooklyn is with Kevin Durant being alone on an island, Kyrie Irving, whatever world he seems to be feeling in. And then you have the rest of the Nets roster. Like, it's not great. Or James Harden would have not thrived, and Ben Simmons probably would have boosted up, but then Philly would have been disappointed in James Harden, and then they would have still ripped Ben Simmons. Like, that's, or the two of them would thrive together, and then it really would not matter because Philly in the end is all in. But I think Ben's definitely scared. I don't think he wants to show up in Philadelphia with as hard of a town that is. And
he's actually going to be on the bench at Wells Fargo Center, but he's not playing.
Oh, boy,
they're going to boo him right out the center, man. They're going to boo him right out of the arena, man.
And when is that?
Thursday.
That's
March
Thursday.
5th.
I'm tuning in because I want to see it. I seriously want to see it because at the end, I'm not somebody that would think badly, but this stuff you got to get it. You got to get it through your head. You're not going to avoid any of this. You either suck it up, take it like a man, and just move on with it, or you're just. I just love to see it. I love to see how the reaction would be in Philly.
So we're gonna go over. So we're gonna go over to the NFL, and when we have tight end David Njoku gets franchise tag for the Cleveland Browns. Is this a good move or a bad move for the Cleveland Browns, knowing they do have some other tight ends over there?
So you know what? I don't think this is a bad move for Cleveland. If you actually think about teams with tight end tandems, like New England with Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, I think next year it will be much, much better. I mean, these guys are fresh in new places. I do think of at the time you had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert in Philly, and I thought that worked out perfectly because Dallas Goedert can give you any catches at any day and would give you important scores. Even Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski, and now they have a triplet with him, OJ Howard, and with Cameron Brate, but it still worked out perfectly. I don't think this is a bad move. I was kind of disappointed with the fact that because again the Chargers are needing a tight end, and there are some teams that do need it. But I was kind of disappointed in the end with the fact that the franchise tag. But I understood why, because Austin Hooper, as you know, needs to get the football more. But Cleveland's main purpose is the quarterback. That's it. I mean, you've already seen how OBJ has been thriving. In the end, having a dual tight end set, because one could basically be the blocking and the other can be the receiving tight end. I think Hooper is exactly all those things above. And David Njoku, as you've seen, was kind of more as just being utilized as blocking. So I think that works perfectly if you need help with the offensive line.
And we're going to go over to the WWE, where we just announced the second inductee into the WWE Hall of Fame, and that is Vader. So we already know that The Undertaker is always going to be the lead face for the WWE Hall of Fame, but Vader is now the second person to be announced in the WWE Hall of Fame. What's your thoughts, Jake?
So, first of all, congratulations to Vader, honestly. Man, I loved honestly like this list. I seriously did. When I seen the list come out, because I seen it all in the group chat, this is great stuff. And it's well deserved in the end, because ultimately we're all hoping that we get new breeds into the sport itself. But I thought this was great. I thought this was a great nod. This was one that was very well deserved. And I mean, I can't wait for at least the next few that are going to come up in this list. I mean, it's going to be pretty stacked, man. Seriously, but I thought this was a great brand gesture.
All right, so the NHL redesigns their Stanley Cup logo. Me and Jake talked about this earlier. He said it looks like the Las Vegas Golden Knights, but what is his thoughts on it? How are you feeling about this? You think they're going to let the Golden Knights take this year, man?
So here's my thing. When I looked at that, because they also showed the previous Stanley Cup logos as well. And they were very I've seen a bunch of comments from people. They were very cartoonish, as they said. Like, that's what some people had basically said of the old ones. And I loved what the past years was. I mean, they've rolled on that for years. And it looked sharp. It looked like you were priming me for playoffs. Mm-hmm. This new one that I look at, like, I'm serious. Look at that. The whole thing on the inside just literally looks like the Golden Knights shield. And all you're replacing it with is just a Stanley Cup, and then it just looks so simplified. I just feel like, honestly, things are getting so simplified nowadays. Like, they don't even have. I'm telling you, I'm looking at Super Bowls. I'm looking at the Stanley Cups. It looks so simplified now that there's not even a creativity like there was before in the past. And I miss that. Like, this past year's was not bad. Like, it shined up because it was in California. But seriously, can we please bring creativity back? Like, I liked it. I don't know how I feel about it. I like to see how the Stanley Cup final will literally look like. I mean, obviously, it's not looking great for Vegas. I already spoke upon that. They right now are in such bad shape, and I've said it several times. They are not even in the position where I look at them and they are contenders. I seriously don't think so. Yeah, it's looking so bad. But I'd like to see how the Stanley Cup final would look like with this logo, but I just think it's way too simplified. Seriously, I don't think they even took in the time to even make it creative. Like, if you looked at all those logos, those look fantastic. Like, it looked like you were primed for Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, you were ready for when the Stanley Cup final would be around. But
true.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. The Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was creative. I think it's hard to say about NBA. It's really hard to say about NBA because I think they're like mixed in between. They're like simplified yet creative. But I think the World Series has been very creative.
They've been very creative with their logos every year.
Yeah. So I'd like to see how the Stanley Cup final would look, but I just think it's so simplified, dude.
Even though the music is not played, we do have one more topic here. Mm-hmm. I am going to skip the Miami topic, but let's go into Matthew Stafford might be getting a raise up to $45 million a year with the Los Angeles Rams. That's been a rumor that has been going around about Stafford getting a raise since he's won the Super Bowl. He wasn't a Super Bowl MVP, but he did get over the hump and win the big one. What's your thoughts?
Oh man, I have to see from it. Was this
It was court to Bleacher Report.
Oh wow.
$45 million a year for Matthew Stafford.
I think honestly, and how long's the term deal? I honestly think 3 years, man. Like, because that's as long as we possibly have for Matthew Stafford. Okay. I think because 3 at least. You could probably get lucky to have 4, but I think we might have 3. Because all of this is just accolades at this point to get him into the Hall of Fame. But I think this is great because the fact of you bring a championship to Los Angeles and the entire Rams roster was so shaped up and it was perfect in the time where I think Sean McVay trusts Matthew Stafford. as much as all of us were so questionable when the first time he went into the LA, we thought, dude, is he really the real thing? And it worked out perfectly. And sure enough, they got a Super Bowl. I'm not mad at that. I think, honestly, I think it would be well worth it. I don't see any problem with this, but I do think, because I know the Rams got a lot to think about. They got a lot to think about from here, but you've got the franchise quarterback for right now, and he's still in good shape, luckily, because I thought Detroit would have completely broken him, but he's still in good shape, and they're going to fix up the offensive line, so I wouldn't be mad at that. I wouldn't be mad at that until they find their new quarterback protege. I really do think this worked perfectly.
So it does say that the Rams are reportedly hoping for a contract averaging closer to $35 million annually. And multiple sources tell Rodriguez that it's a surprise that it will be less than 40 per year. Matthew Stafford has a $23 million cap hit for 2022 in his final year of his contract, which ranks 13th among most quarterbacks according to Spot Track. The deal worth $45 million per year would match Patrick Mahomes as the largest annual salary in the NFL.
Wow. I honestly think that's well worth it. Seriously. I mean, a guy that you trust that much, and he's a grown-up. Like, he wanted the opportunity, and he did everything in his power this past year to do that. And Detroit was kind enough to send him into a place where he was literally going to grow. Like, this is why I thought this was so perfect. Like, this was written all over. This was the perfect spot.
And that was your hot press, ladies and gentlemen. I know the music went off, but we had a lot of topics to go over. But that is your hot press, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Well, we got I know I got my list up over here, but I've been working on a couple of them, but I think we kind of get an idea. And our best for last is basically called trade or stay. And it's a lot more of all the names that we know that are big that, because I honestly think there's been some big time trade rumors. Now, of course, regarding to that, Calvin Ridley's off this list now because of the fact of now being banned due to betting games. I now am like, well, there goes that out the window.
Right.
So now they have to literally improvise at some point, somehow, some way. But again, I think it's disappointing. We hadn't seen something like this in a long, long time. But
can I just say my piece on it?
Oh, go ahead. Here, I'll take a second. I'll take a second from here.
And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it in the most nicest way. I could completely understand that he's an NFL player that betted on NFL games while he was focusing on his mental health, and he stepped away from the team last year. I can completely understand that. But $1,500, you suspend this man for $1,500 for a year. I understand if you would have just suspended him for about 8 games or 9 games. Cool. I'm fine with that. But he might miss 2 years of football because of $1,500. Y'all must not catch on to a lot of NFL players that's betting way more than that on their own NFL games. But you catch Calvin Ridley for $1,500, which $1,500 to him is like $5 to him. I did understand I understand that the betting thing is not really prohibited, but trust me, it's other NFL players out there that's doing this illegally as well. And probably doing it for bigger money. But $1,500 though for a whole year, you just should have gave him 7 to 8 games and let him play out the rest of the year. You're making it seem like he spent like $20 million betting. It's $1,500. And he even said it himself on Twitter that he does not have a gambling problem.
Yeah, I think that's
I
ridiculous.
think it's really excessive to me from the NFL.
Yeah, that's very excessive for 1,500. I mean, good Lord. Yeah, you're right. There are players that do. And the funny thing of it is, this used to be such an illegal thing years ago, and now because of now because we have like DraftKings and a lot of other a lot of other a lot of other different
FanDuel
yeah,
and casino.
lots of these players are gonna lots of these players are gonna end up playing. I mean, I'm curious to watch True Gems. I'm curious to watch Uncut Gems. I'm sorry. Because that's even one where you think of, you had Kevin Garnett and you have one of the biggest sports guy that was just like betting his money's worth on, and he was winning big bucks. And, again, sometimes like even Pete Rose's scenario with betting games.
Yeah.
And he's still not in the Hall of Fame. And we're just kind of past this. So yeah, I think it's crazy, honestly. I mean, in the end, Calvin Ridley, like taking time off, and then all of a sudden, this ends up sparking up. I don't know. I don't know how you really process that, but it's crazy.
I can really commend the Atlanta Falcons for sticking by his side. They said they're not willing to trade Calvin Ridley, even regardless of what just came out. They said they declined a lot of offers from a lot of teams, and they're not giving up Calvin Ridley. Simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, but in the end, it's like, why would you get rid of an impactful player after Julio Jones left? Like, that's the one thing. I can tolerate where it's like, this just happened, but at least I still have my wide receiver. Because in the end, what would you do? Would you trust Russell Gage? Would you trust a lot of these other wide receivers? There's no one you could really trust in this roster. So, yeah, I have no idea. All right, so we are definitely ready for our best for last trade or stay. And a lot of these players that we have up here, as we know, Darion's going to send me over the listing itself, and we'll definitely break every single one of these players down. So as I mentioned, Calvin Ridley no longer on this list because I was very certain I was going to put him up on there. But now after that ended up happening, that takes him off. So let's go ahead and let's start up our trades or stays. Who do we end up having here in today's list?
On today's list of trade or stays, number one on this list, Giants running back Saquon Barkley.
You know what? I would say trade. I do see it becoming a well, hear me out. Because the Giants right now want something new. You bring in Brian Dable for one reason, and then you go and you get Joe Shane. So that means you're getting a whole different team, offensively, defensively. And if you think about it, Saquon Barkley, he's had so many different injuries, so many of them. And the one thing is that his value has dropped down to a fourth rounder. Seriously. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. They've literally it's just so bad right now in his stock that it's the perfect moment that, honestly, if you ask for a trade, because the Giants right now, they could go and get themselves, even if you trade away Saquon Barkley, the one big asking price, like another player that's on this list too. I honestly think you got to get yourself a new running back. I mean, I wouldn't waste my time with Zeke. I would not waste my time with, a couple of other players, but I mean, some that would need a new fresh face. I think Saquon personally would work best if he was, I think honestly, like if you put him like on a Chargers roster with Austin Eckler, and all he would have to do is just be kind of how like Dallas treated Zeke. You had Tony Pollard, who was explosive. He would be the one main guy on the field, and then have Zeke being the red zone guy. I feel like that if you could boost Saquon's stock up, that would work perfectly. I think potentially Arizona could be one good place. Or even if you want to sneak in a running back next to Cam Akers, if you're the LA Rams, and just
Right.
all you're
Because
dealing
you
with
don't
is
know
just
what
a
they're going
fourth
to do with
rounder,
Sony Michel.
right? And if he's just as low as a fourth rounder, I would not miss out on that. Because again, I just think he needs a new change of scenery. I just don't think the Giants really are working well with their offensive line. I don't.
So shout out to B-Town Breakdown saying that he be back in Boston tomorrow from his blood transfusion in Mets. Just another day of kicking leukemia's ass. The fight continues. Keep fighting, brother. We love you. We miss you, man. Can't wait for you to get back on the live streams. I just wanted to say that. Another thing I gotta say, his value has dropped because I feel like his injuries come from not having an offensive line. He has to create his own lanes. He has to create his own plays. This offensive line is not pushing anybody back or even opening up holes for Saquon Barkley. So if I am Saquon, I will say trade. But if you don't beef up the offensive line or help out the offensive line for Saquon or Daniel Jones or any of these receivers, then I think Saquon needs to be traded. But the next one that we do have on here, speaking of running backs, we're gonna stay in that era right there. Christian McCaffrey. This is a good one.
Yeah, I honestly think Christian McCaffrey, seriously, this is a tough one because if I'm I honestly do think this is a tough one because with Carolina right now, like Carolina needs a run game, but then again, you get rid of him, you still have Chuba Hubbard, but I don't know how impactful he may be if once Christian McCaffrey leaves. So I personally, because I'm also looking at a I'm looking at a quarterback.
The
yeah,
offensive coordinator in Carolina.
Yeah,
I don't like it at all. I think McCaffrey needs to be traded.
Yeah,
get him out of there now.
Okay. Yeah, I would honestly see Christian McCaffrey leaving because in the end, because the other part was too, since his big season he had, he suffered injuries. He's been injury prone, but it's not to say that because when he's healthy, he's very impactful. I think he could be a big option that some team needs a running back. I mean, honestly, I hate to play this around, but if I'm Philadelphia, I'm making a call.
Ooh.
If I'm the Eagles, I literally would make a call because they have not had
3 first-round draft picks. I mean,
I know, but I truly think that, but they have not had a better running back in years, probably since LaShawn McCoy and Brian Westbrook. Jay Ajayi lasted for as long as he could, but it didn't work. And
they need to give up on Miles Sanders.
Miles Sanders has been even injury prone, but they figured out that you got to give him the ball more. It's so hard to say it, like, because the Eagles' identity, they know they're a running team. They are definitely a run team. They're not a pass team. They're all about speed, but they've got to give their running back the football. Seriously, they have got to give him back the football. But I think anywhere that needs a running back desperately and someone that really impacts this offense, I think it would be perfect. I mean, if you sent in a deal, like let's say if you sent in a deal, I mean, another team that I think could work with this, maybe Chicago. Because if Chicago needs a real good run game. And so I think if instead of shredding like 3 first-round draft picks, at least get maybe 2 and save yourself the argument with maybe some type of defender they need, because they're going to need some help. They're going to need some help like all around the defense, and maybe an offensive player that really does work well. That's what I would do. But it was so tough for me to think that, but I think it's trending more that Christian McCaffrey will likely leave.
Yeah, I just feel like the play calling with Ben McAdoo is just going to be so conservative, and I think they're still going to try to run CMC into the ground in Carolina, and that's all they really have over there. I mean, they're not really doing nothing else with any other weapons when it comes to the running back. I mean, Trevor Hubbard is a good backup for CMC, but I just don't like the play calling for Ben McAdoo. That's why he's not a. That's why he wasn't a coach for a while. That's why he wasn't a offensive coach or a head coach for a while because he's just not that great. So CMC, I say trade. The
Yeah.
next person, we go into the quarterbacks now, and we have 4 of them on this list here. And the first one comes to mind, and that is Jimmy Garoppolo for the San Francisco 49ers.
So this was tough because I did talk to Tay Rock of Talking Tay Rock Sports. You know, I right now with all of the news that's really spreading around, and here's the other part: he's now going to end up having shoulder surgery, and he's going to be out for 4 months. You'll be lucky enough. You might. I think the way things are trending right now, because people are not even sure that Trey Lance is even ready. But I still say you got to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not saying you can't trust Trey Lance, but the fact of the matter is he's got to get the reps he needs. Of course, he may end up having some spurts. He might struggle, but that's what the preseason's for. You give him some snaps in the preseason, not all of them, but enough to where he can work his mechanics. People are scared about that, but that's how we felt about Josh Allen. That's how we felt about Justin Herbert. And that's how we felt about some of these other quarterbacks. And in the end, it panned out well. So I feel like that if you really trust Trey Lance enough with this offense, then Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, should be traded. I would trade him either Pittsburgh, Denver would need a quarterback. Honestly, the Colts would be one now. And there's even some news sources where something would happen with Green Bay, then I would say you would take Jimmy Garoppolo there, but I doubt that would even happen. I think Aaron Rodgers may stay in Green Bay. So I think Pittsburgh, Denver, Washington's another consideration, but I still think you would trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Get at least your money's worth off of it and trust that Trey Lance is going to really work this process.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's time to kind of like, I wouldn't say rebuild, but I think you need a more healthier quarterback. I mean, it depends on when he has that surgery. Is when is he going to be available? Because I feel like right now, even though Jimmy Garoppolo, he has a lot of mistakes in games, but all quarterbacks do. But the fact that they went in as a 6 seed and got into the playoffs, almost got into the Super Bowl. I think Jimmy Garoppolo should stay. Okay. Give it one more run. He's not really breaking the bank there under contract. He and Trey Lance can learn a little bit more from Jimmy Garoppolo. Even though we know Trey Lance is an athletic freak, we know this. But I still think he still need a veteran quarterback to mold him a little bit before you throw him out on the football field. So I say give Jimmy Garoppolo one more year. I say he stays.
That's fair. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, San Francisco could really benefit either or.
Right. But they can benefit, but I feel like a veteran quarterback right now with the core that they have at wide receiver and the running backs and that defense, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy as of right now. Yeah. Until further down the line, we see something different. But as of right now, I think Jimmy Garoppolo stays at least one more year. Mm-hmm. Speaking of another quarterback that had a lot of controversy in this offseason, and that is Indianapolis Colts quarterback Carson Wentz.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I honestly think this is just I feel like it's how the owner's feeling. I mean, Jim Irsay probably feeling pissed off, but I would not to me, there's two things that could possibly happen. I mean, one, they're saying they want to trade him or cut him. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a dumb idea. But to me personally, if I want to be logic about it, I'd say stay. Because first of all, the one thing I look at is that the Colts right now, I logically would say stay, but if you really wanted a real opinion, you'd probably trade him away, because this is the thing about the Colts. And also, Jack Doyle just retired. They have no tight end in the room.
No tight end at all.
So now you really have to start thinking about getting a tight end. And remember, Eric Ebron, I thought was really good. When he produced well, I thought he worked perfectly fine with Andrew Luck. And then there's the wide receiving core. The wide receiving core is so piss poor. It was down way below. I mean, I love Michael Pittman, but he's going to need help. T.Y. Hilton is going to end up retiring. Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal, these guys disappear. I don't see either impact with that Colts offense, all except Jonathan Taylor. That's really all I look at. But I think logically it would be a mistake to let him go. But I think if you're Washington, Pittsburgh, or you're Denver, I'd make a call, because that point, could you imagine Pittsburgh with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris, and also now having to build that offensive line? Because you're not going to be that confident with Mason Rudolph. You're not going to be that confident. And the same would go for Denver with Drew Lock. You wouldn't be that confident in him. And it just and again, I feel so terribly bad with Teddy Bridgewater, because of just the fact that he goes from New Orleans to Carolina to Denver. Now, who knows? He might end up reuniting in New Orleans, from what I'm being told. But in the end, you've got Jerry Jeudy, you've got Cortland Sutton, you got KJ Hamler and Noah Fant, and you have a run game. So Denver would be on that call in a heartbeat, because they're not going to end up getting Aaron Rodgers from the look of it. But I think I wouldn't even pass this up. People completely reiterate back from what he was playing like in Philly. And I don't. Right. We're already years past this. He's no longer in Philly. He's in Indianapolis. And now you're kind of giving up on an inexpensive quarterback right now that could give you, and it wasn't bad. 27 touchdowns, 7 picks, and he had a rating of 98.
Right.
You're not getting that from any other quarterback outside of that. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, but that's it. But in this fact, it's trade, because that's what it's trending towards.
It's sad that it has to trade, but I'm going to say stay. And the only reason why I say Carson Wentz needs to stay, because you need to put weapons around him. Michael Pittman Jr. is not the only guy that you can rely on. Jonathan Taylor is not the only guy can you rely on. Outside of those two, who else do you really have? Let's be realistic here. He had less than double-digit interceptions this year without a number 2 receiver and without a healthy tight end in Jack Doyle. The defense didn't help him either. That defense didn't help him. Like, people would like to put so much on a quarterback when you have 10 other players on that football field, and you have 10 other players, including him, on offense, and you have 11 on the opposite side. They got to give him the football back. And that Colts defense did not help their end of the bargain when it came down to it, when they supposed to win or get in against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, Carson Wentz played bad, but the defense just played his worst, because you gave up a lot of points against a Jacksonville Jaguars team that struggled to score all year long. So you can't put all this blame on Carson Wentz. If you build something around Carson Wentz and keep him upright, he's back to that MVP caliber.
And can you believe though, too, in the last few years, Jacksonville has had Indy's number? I didn't think that was logically possible.
It's been a long time since Jacksonville had Indy's number. It's been a long time, even with Andrew Luck.
I don't know how that's even logically possible, but
It's called division rival, division spoiler. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, we know all about how that looks and feels.
Oh yeah, we definitely know that, Jake. We're not gonna remind you though. We're not going to remind you. I'm gonna save the best for last, but we're gonna go into it. We just talked about Calvin Ridley and Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about the quarterback Matt Ryan. Do we stay or we trade? What we doing here?
I honestly think right now I would stay, because Atlanta in this point, they've got, and this is kind of a smart thing for Atlanta to do. as far as what their money deal is. They know that they need some help. They know that they need to make sure the offensive line is right. I do think they need to go and get themselves at least another wide receiver because of the fact of wide receivers are coming and going. Their run game since they've had Cordero Patterson has been a lot better. I think maybe they can step up a little bit on running back to give them some help. But the other part that I think is so bad is that secondary. I mean, AJ Terrell is doing exactly what he could possibly do, but they've got to fix that secondary. It doesn't look as great. Lots and lots of times that secondary is getting burnt, and you're not having anybody. And that's the other thing. I think, and we've seen some good stuff from Kyle Pitts this year. So it makes me excited for what next year's going to look like under Arthur Smith. So you're giving Arthur Smith at least that second year. Let's see how that really transitions, because he's a smart offensive guy, and that's what Matt Ryan needed. So I think if you run this next year, this may be a lot better. So I don't think this should be the perfect time to trade him away. I'd rather stay. I'd rather stay if I'm Matt Ryan, knowing how much the money cost it is, because what are you going to do if you ain't got exactly the money left in for a quarterback? You can't really do nothing. So I'd rather swallow the pill and knowing that I have some offense with Matt Ryan, and hopefully he gets back into his own form again. But that's what I would personally do if I'm Atlanta.
I think Matt Ryan has to stay too. I think you just have to put
and the division is so lopsided in the South.
It's very lopsided. It's a weird division now. It's a weird
because
division.
Tom Brady retired. Sean Payton
Breeze
and Drew Brees is gone.
And
then Carolina doesn't even know what the hell that they're doing at quarterback, and neither is they really developing well for Sam Darnold. But
then we got questions with how Jameis Winston is going to look after his ACL, and they just paid Tyson Hill that big contract. It's gonna be a lot of quarterback situations there. It's a lot of quarterback situations for the NFC South besides Matt Ryan, and I think Matt Ryan needs to stay here. This is their division to take this year, in my opinion. It's their division to take, and I feel like they have a Cordell Patterson. If you go get another running back that can tandem with Cordell Patterson, that helps out their running game, you can help beef up their offensive line. But now, since Calvin Ridley is gone, now you got to go in the draft and get you one of these guys like a Drake London or a Chris Olave, if he's there, if he's available at that slot. Since now you hear about the Calvin Ridley situation that's going to be out the whole year, now your drafts change. So if you want to keep Matt Ryan around, you got to give him the weapon. Why do you think he went to the Super Bowl? He went to the Super Bowl with weapons. He went to the Super Bowl with a great defense. Now you just got to rebuild and get these young guys the ball. You still got an AJ Terrell that's still on a come up, or as a corner. You have some young pieces. You just have to put it all together. I think Matt Ryan should stay.
Yeah, I really do think so. I just think I would not give up on this whole thing yet, no matter how lopsided that division itself looks. But this is why I said if you're Carolina, I'd be paying attention to Malik Willis. And same thing with New Orleans. Either because that NFC needs young kids. You're not getting what the AFC has. If you're getting Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes and Derek Carr, you are so loaded in the AFC. And the NFC barely has any of them. Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, and even, the oldest you have is Aaron Rodgers. So there's barely anybody that's there. So I think, because if you are Arthur Blank and you look at exactly how this franchise sits at in this division, I wouldn't do it, because at least Matt Ryan is giving you the efficient plays, and he's going to give you. What's to say that Atlanta doesn't win that division next year? What is to say that they couldn't possibly make it, a come up where they're competitive and they go and take that division? I am not saying it's going to be easy, because you still have Tampa, New Orleans. New Orleans is defense mostly, but I'm just saying they could. And I wouldn't blow that chance. If that's going to give me 2 years of Matt Ryan in Atlanta, then I wouldn't even trade. I would rather just stick to the division wins And then in the end, I can then look at my future otherwise.
Right.
But yeah,
If they don't do nothing for Matt Ryan this year, then if I am Matt Ryan, I'll say I won out.
yeah, I agree.
That's just how I see it. So
agree.
last but not least, we keep it for the top guy that been outside of Aaron Rodgers that they been talking about, because Aaron Rodgers is not on this list.
Yeah.
So Seattle Seahawks quarterback.
Yeah.
Russell, last name Wilson. Do we stay or do we trade?
So this is what I've thought. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of fans, were thinking it was going to be a trade scenario. But if it was me, it's more likely he will stay. And this is respectfully, because I think because this last year is the last year of his contract. So he's going to play it out. And Seattle and Pete Carroll, they're already looking at this. Because I talked about it before, and I've heard it all through media. But the other part, for Seattle, this is kind of the make or break for Pete Carroll in the Hall of Fame. Because if Russell Wilson's gone, that means now you got to give me a better quarterback to fulfill that. Because remember, Pete Carroll's been fired twice in his career and yet has won a Super Bowl. If Seattle can't get that right with the Cardinals brewing up, who knows what's going to happen with Kyler Murray, the Rams and Matthew Stafford, and you've got San Francisco with their health. So it's hard for me to say that. So I think personally, I'd stay. I would not waste my time. I would do this right for at least for the fans of Seattle. Finish up the last year, and then in the end, I think he'll walk with a new contract. I think that's the right logical thing to do. Because again, if Pete Carroll's fired a third time, that's going to hinder his Hall of Fame. That's going to hinder him pretty bad. So I think this would be more respectful for Russell Wilson to finish out the last year. And then maybe, because I seriously think, and Washington has been pushing hard, and I think it'll be a lot better. Washington's telling you, just hold the reins for right now, because come next year, I feel like Russell Wilson will be a Commander. Just finish up the year in Seattle.
You think he would be a Commander?
I seriously think. Here's my part, though. Washington needs they need a culture change. They've got to. This is so much of a mess, and there's nobody better that can bring the positivity other than Russell Wilson. There's not. Cam Sims, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, and J.D. McKissick.
I don't know,
and
man.
Ron Rivera, a veteran coach.
I cannot see Russ in those colors, man. But
it ain't even that. But think about it, though. What has Ron Rivera wanted? He wanted a grown-up at quarterback. He's dealt with Cam. He's dealt with Taylor Heineke. He's dealt with Kyle Allen. And he's also dealt with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he wants a grown-up in that spot. So I think that's perfect for Russell Wilson. Because I trust Ron Rivera, and he's saying, if you give me a good, healthy offensive line, which I think they do, and then you beef up the defense with their health, and you've got offense, you've got wide receivers, that's what I would do. I think, honestly, he'll stay in Seattle for one last year, but I think it's pushing that point. I really do think it is pushing that point. I see it. I just see it written all over.
I don't know. I feel like it's time to trade. I really think it's time for Russell Wilson to be traded, because terrible year this year as a team. If Russ wants to win now and wants to get back into the playoffs and get back to that Super Bowl,
yeah,
it's time to move on from Seattle. All these years, what have they done to try to beef up this offensive line his whole career? Not once they tried to beef up. They brought in old offensive lineman that was already out the door. That was not doing nothing. Yeah, you went out and got him a number one receiver in DK Metcalf, but he's running around like it's little giants. He barely can see DK Metcalf because he's always on a run. You got a Tyler Lockett that's one of the most underrated receivers in football. I feel like he has the weapons. I mean, you got to think about Rashard Penny. If he can stay healthy, that's good. But this offensive line, and I feel like right now when it comes to Seattle, the organization, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, all of them are not on the same page at this point.
Yeah.
It's been Russell Wilson begging for offensive line year after year after year, and you don't give him that. You give him the contract that he wants. Yes, he wants to stay in Seattle. You give him that contract. Boom. But what else do you do after he gets that contract? You give him nothing to protect.
Oh, I agree.
And I feel like that is the reason why I feel like Russ needs to be traded to a team that has an offensive line, that has a good running back, and have some decent receivers. Even though DK Metcalf is one of those decent receivers, but he even came out and said he probably wants out of Seattle. So if he wants out of Seattle, what makes you think Russ not going to want out of Seattle? Like, it's just something's going on with that organization where they don't want to beef up the offensive line and just want to let Russell. What if you see what happened to him? He hurt his hand.
Yeah,
because no protection. He had to sit out a couple of games because of it.
Or the time he was sacked 6 times against the Rams.
Exactly. So that's frustrating on a quarterback. Do I want to stay another year and just play it out and be banged up and then walk and then I might have season-ending injury that it might bring my value down? I say Russell Wilson, just ask for a trade, bro. Just ask for it. Just ask for it. You deserving of it, man. You did whatever you could to get Seattle a Super Bowl. You did whatever to make that organization relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Now you did what you had to do. Now it's time to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I this is why I love evaluations like this. Because this is why I'm like, anytime when you think of these names, because again, like Matt Ryan makes sense to stay. Because if you're Atlanta and you've got the division wide open because of the way things are changing up, I wouldn't even risk trading, and then it's like now you lucked yourself out of winning the division in the next 2 years, and then having the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. You could trade or stay. That's a benefit of both worlds.
Yeah,
but you would much rather have the veteran there. And again, Carson Wentz, I don't understand it. I think it's such a big mistake from Indianapolis. It's ridiculous. So, but I agree with that with Russell. I just felt like that, you're right. We never know what's happening behind closed doors with the organization and with him personally. There could be something we don't know, but I just look at it like this just means Pete Carroll has to literally find his next quarterback. And do you really think he's going to find it that easily with the cap that they're in? I don't think it's possible.
You can always build. You can always build through the draft. If you don't trade Russell Wilson this year, it is some great potential quarterbacks for next season.
But do you know what that means though too? Like like if you're Seattle and you're trying to get Malik Willis after everything you saw in the combine, like that just means any of them that are up on the tops. But look at some of those teams on the tops. They're not that great. Even if you're trying to sneak into like maybe a 6 or 7 or possibly even a 5.
I wasn't saying this draft. I was saying after his his contract year, the actual quarterback draft class is better next year than it is this year.
Yeah, and maybe that's what you do. In the end, even if you're trying to tank to getting maybe the 2 or the number 1 overall pick for next season, and depending on how the quarterbacks really do favor out, like,
can we get a Russell Wilson for Aaron Rodgers? I'm just saying. Aaron Rodgers like running anyway. Why not? Lord. I'm just saying. They both went out of their respective teams. You never know.
Yeah, God, could you imagine that in Russell in Green Bay? Good Lord, I can't.
Anyway.
I can't even.
It's just like the Commanders. I cannot see Russell Wilson in a Commander's uniform. Same way I cannot see Aaron Rodgers in a goddamn Seahawks uniform. I just can't.
Fair enough. I like that. I like that. Well, because you know what this means now afterward. That means now in the next couple of them, it's going to be free agent frenzy. And that's where we're going to literally pinpoint a bunch of players and a lot of the teams, I would think, honestly, where they might go. That's going to be a lot of fun because if we did the trade, now let's just see what free agency is going to look like.
Well, hey,
and I'm telling you, it's going to be fun.
Calvin Noy just got released today from the Patriots, so I mean,
but look at his value.
Raiders, we need a linebacker, brother. We need a linebacker. I'm just saying.
I'm telling you right now, the news source I've had is they are definitely willing to franchise tag Mike Williams. They're not going to give him up. And I don't blame him. I just feel like after an upset like that, I'd run that back. I wouldn't completely leave after the result like that happened. I think there's stuff that you kind of are like, you're reserving it in your back pocket.
Bro. You never know.
It's true. Yeah.
He wants to be the guy somewhere. He don't want to be behind Keenan Allen the rest of his career.
I agree.
I'm just saying.
I agree. But all right, guys. I appreciate everybody being here on today's show. We had a lot to talk about, and man, was it fun and good to have Darion back up onto the show. My good co-host here. So it's been a lot of fun up here today. I appreciate every single one of you guys, and make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications to keep you up to date on future shows here on the Spotlight Sports Network, as we're working toward getting more interviews, and we're definitely working towards getting more subscribers as well. And we appreciate every single one of your guys' support and love here on the show. And as we've said before, till March 9th, 15% off on merchandises to get yourselves geared up during the summertime, because it's going to be selling like hotcakes. So get on top of it quick, because these deals won't last long. So I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. It's Jake the Snake, and of course, Darion signing off. Have a great Monday, and we will run this back on Friday on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show.
And we're out of here, buddy.
I heard they want the news. Well, we got it just for you. What's your team? Who your player? Who your crew? I heard they want the news. The spotlight is on you, and if you in the hot seat, it's times two. I heard they want the news. Come tune in to the crew. But we got the hook up just like black and blue. I heard they want the news. Spotlight Sports, what it do? Hit subscribe and that like button too. I heard they want the news. Da-na-na-na.